Hey, this is Brian from Bees, and I'm here with Nick from Wonder Effects. Wonder Effects?
Hey,
Wonder Effects?
Wonder Effects, that's the one.
All right, I'm going to do that again. So I was like, sometimes I'll just say it wrong. I'll be like, Wonder Guitar Pedals, and you'll be like, you don't even know the name of my company.
Wonder Devices.
Yeah, Wonder Devices.
Wonder why I didn't change my pedal name when I started. Like,
do you know the real reason it's called Bees Music Shop?
What's that?
Was because the store that was here that I had quit, I now own the building and they're long out of business, but they were Cook's Music. And B was before C in the phone book.
Oh,
and that is a
excellent.
very old-timey story.
no, that's one that I've heard. There was a family friend who was like a songwriter and started his own label, like a Nashville thing. And then they made the label, it was like Music Shop Records or something, and they changed it to A Music Shop Records, so it'd be the first one you find. And I was like, wow.
That made a difference.
Alphabetical order really meant something, It's like you can't do anything nowadays. Like alphabetical order is like out the window. Like what?
You got robots writing letters.
AI comes first in the alphabet too. A, I. They know what they're doing.
It's coming full circle. Everything comes back.
Yeah.
We're back to alphabetical order.
Yes, we're back.
We're back.
A to Z.
A to Z. Okay. Hi, this is Brian from Bees Music, and I'm here with Nick from Wonder Effects, and we're going to take a look at the Wonderwall pedal today. You want to? So what is the Wonderwall? So tell me about this pedal.
The Onderwall started off as my Onederdrive circuit, which I kind of revamped recently and renamed the OnderBolt. And it was kind of the flagship pedal for my company. And one of the main praises I got from customers and people using the pedal was that they loved pairing it with their big muff. Whether it was like a Russian or a Ram's head or even an op amp one, whatever. And they just loved the mid push and the way that the gain interacted with each other. And they were like, you need to make a big muff someday. And I was like, well, I don't think that I'm going to make a standalone muff style pedal.
Yeah.
It's not on my radar. And then one day I was like, I kind of came up with the name Wonderwall as a joke.
Yeah.
The wall of sound. Pink Floyd's The Wall, which is kind of notoriously, drive, muff combo. And I was like, what if I did a 2-in-1? And the muff style circuit that I created on channel 1 on this pedal, it has pretty much everything that I've ever wanted in a muff. The different types of EQs and the amounts of gain on the toggle. It's really simple, but really versatile.
And that's this side of it, right?
Yep. So we got the Muffy style over here, which I don't have a name for that.
Muffy
actual
style
circuit.
is pretty good.
Muffy style, Muffy the Vampire Slayer. That's probably been done. Everybody's
Has
done.
it?
I think everybody's done every pun, but it's whatever. I'll come up with something equally garbage and do it. Like that's what I normally do. But yeah,
Don't use a cat. That's my thing.
Oh yeah, you can have the cat. I was thinking about having my dog. On
That's
a pedal
summer school's
at some
thing.
point.
His real
Yeah.
dog.
Well, we'll have to fight for it.
Yeah.
'Cause
Dog fight.
We'll have a dog fight. I'll see them soon. And then the Onderbolt is on the right, and there is an order toggle, which I don't think a lot of people do a muff into a distortion. It kind of does some weird things, but I didn't want to rob the fine people of that. I wanted to include it because there are some really cool, doomy, weird sounds, almost like if you're running a muff into a distorted amp kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
It's and then going from the drive side into the fuzzy muffy side, you can get some seriously weird, unexpected, chuggy metal tones.
Yeah,
so it's a very
because
strange.
you can change the order on this thing, right?
Yep. The order toggle's right in the middle there. There's a lot of switches and a lot of knobs. But
Sweet.
yeah, I don't want to say that I created the pedal as sort of like a gimmick, like a novelty thing. But at the same time, I didn't know if other people would appreciate the sounds as much as I did. And so far, the pedal's technically not even out yet, but I did a pre-release with my customer base via the mailing list. And I've gotten so many people that reached out and they said that I hit it out of the park as far as the gain staging and the matching of the two sides. And it's actually one of their favorite pedals that I've done. So yeah, I guess it's going to be part of the line.
And you even got one to Oasis. Or
Yes.
how did that? So that came out because like you texted me and you're like, "Do you think I'm gonna get sued?" And I was like, maybe.
Yeah, it's possible. The pedal has nothing to do with Oasis or the song Wonderwall. And I thought that would be part of the fun to confuse people and have like a giant gainy mess come out of this pedal.
You definitely do the same thing we do with our cat pedals, where you let the pun guide you, and then everything else falls in line, which I think is a very valid design strategy.
Sometimes if you can get the good pun and the good idea for the artwork and the circuit to all come together at once, which is exactly what happened with this, there's like no better way to get a recipe going. So yeah, I ended up posting a picture because I wanted to go see Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds when they played at Pine Knob recently. And I kind of said, does anybody know anybody who can get this in Noel's hands? And Dave is Gem Archer's guitar tech who plays in the High Flying Birds. And somebody tagged him and he was just like, absolutely, let's do this. And he has a pickup company. I believe they're called Northern Pickups.
Okay.
And they're based in England. And he was like, I can trade you a pickup for a Wonderwall. And I was like, well, I'll bring one for you and one for Noel. And if you can get it to Noel Gallagher, the guy who wrote the song Wonderwall, awesome. Yeah. And then he also was rad enough to get me tickets, the same tickets that I was going to buy.
Nice.
Which after fees would have been pretty expensive, So I got to enjoy the show. And the pedal is somewhere in Noel's studio at this point, which is very cool.
Yeah.
So, just like one of those weird little rock and roll dreams that came true, in the pedal world.
It's funny how interconnected our industries are, it's just really interesting how you start going in there and you start running into people and they know a million people and we all have friends who know friends who know friends. So
I feel like playing in a band, there was kind of a weird competitive nature to like trying to get on tours, trying to get this person to notice your band. But with the guitar pedal thing, I don't want to say it's easier to infiltrate and like cross borders, but I've made a lot more cool connections with artists and with different players through the pedal industry than me just being in a band playing alongside of them.
Yeah.
And I think just like pedals make friends. I think that's kind of
I think we all as guitar players just fall in love with gear and the stories and the ideas and the textures. And we all have that sort of in common at any level, I think. I mean, look at how many like documentaries you go and they just like gush at you about eras of things or how many famous musicians help design pedals. I mean, you look at, like Bob Heil was talking. I met him one time when he first started his microphone company and he would talk about working with Jimi Hendrix. And it's like, they were like, crazy. There was no effects then. I mean, they were just making stuff up, and it's crazy.
Yeah. It's very strange. And, the fact that I even started a pedal company came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It went from being a hobby to my career really fast. And I mean, really fast. You hear about companies kind of pop in and a year is like this process. And then another year they're figuring out this process. For me, it was like every week or two, I was coming up with a new way to move forward. And it's just wild that someone like me can learn how to solder and then instantly have access to so much information online and just meet so many people. So Wonder Effects wouldn't exist without just all the awesome people that I've worked with and helped me. Like, 'cause I need a lot of help. I'm a musician that owns a pedal company.
Yeah.
It's really rad that it all kind of fell into place and it's still going. So yeah,
that's awesome. So like, where did you so I know you used to tour. So you've told me a bunch of times, you mentioned you were in a band, you played a lot of different bands. Like so how did that lead into like, I'm going to design circuits? Because like you sound like to me that you weren't growing up with a soldering iron. The soldering iron and the stuff came after.
Oh yeah.
It came later. Like the pedal company was first and then you worked backwards to the technical stuff.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. And it basically I started my band called the Swellers when I was 15 and my brother was 14, and that was in 2002. And we were like, okay, this is going to be like our fun little high school thing, and we made some.
So you were scene kids. I started a music store when these were all happening.
But we were like the scene kids that I think you're talking about from that era with the swoopy bangs and like the angst and the bad haircuts. We were like anti that because we were too punk rock. So.
I think of that as like we rented a VFW hall and we have 9 bands.
Okay, so that's like literal, just like the scene kids, the kids in the music scene who basically created the music scene. A couple of years later came like the scene kids, with the whole thing,
the emo kids. I think of those as emo kids. I'm just out of touch enough to be wrong, like 20% off the time. So
every 4 years, things drastically change. So, but yeah, we were like punk rock kids. I still wear the same clothes that I wore back then. I'm bored.
What's that like?
Yeah, I think we got used to it. Yeah, so we started this band, and then fast forward, my brother finally graduates from high school. I had graduated the year prior, and I was like, okay, we're going on tour full time. Where we were signed to a small label, did an EP, did a full length, ended up just touring 8-9 months out of the year, self-booked stuff, right out of high school. And then it just progressed from there. It was like, we got a couple bands bringing us out on tour. We went out with a Streetlight Manifesto. Oh, yeah. And there was a band called Only Crime that was like members of Descendants and Bane and our good friends, A Wilhelm Scream. And then
I met the drummer from that band because you messaged me. You're like, oh, you met, because I met him. He has a drum company.
Yeah, Whale City.
Yeah, he's wonderful. I love that guy.
Great name. Do you know the story about the name Whale City? They're from New Bedford, Massachusetts, which is Whale City, like Moby Dick, whale. And Whale City, like whaling on drums. Yeah. Great. Perfect.
I just thought it was whaling on drums, Whale City. And...
Yeah. No, it all kind of came together. But super great band. My first tour was with them. I played bass. I filled in on bass for like a full, basically a month-long U.S. tour. And Less Than Jake was headlining. So it's like I'm 18 years old, fresh out of basically dropping out of college to go out with them. And doing these huge theaters that are just completely packed, watching a band that I grew up listening to every night. The Less Than Jake guys were just awesome. And I still keep in touch with them today and, send them and sell them pedals, which is just wild. Yeah. My band, the Swellers, learned a lot of what we know basically from me doing that tour and me relaying the information. And then we ended up signing to a pretty big label called Fueled by Ramen.
Oh, yeah. No, they're fantastic. Yeah, we saw a ton of their records in the record division of the store. For
sure. And it was kind of like a weird move for us, kind of being punk rock kids and being like, well, let's sign to this band that has a lot of neon going on. It was a very neon year, 2008, 2009. Cobra Starship was like really big, like all these, like radio pop bands. We were like, well, maybe we can transcend and get more people into our music and we can get on the radio, whatever. And it didn't quite end up working out that way. We stayed pretty underground, but we got to do what we wanted to do, which was awesome. We got to see the world. And one thing that got us signed to Fueled by Ramen was their A&R guy really liked us. And he was friends with my cousin, who my cousin got me into punk rock in the first place. And I remember emailing that A&R guy, Johnny Minardi, when I was 15, when I started the Swellers. And I was like, hey, I started this little band, like mp3.com. Here's my link. Yeah. And he was like, that's cool, bud. Keep it up. Just being nice. And then, 2009 rolls around and he's signing me to Fueled by Ramen, which he now works for. And it's it's like one of those weird full circle, like, how did this end up working out kind of things. But one of the things that really got us closer to Fueled by Ramen was Haley from the band Paramore. Yeah. Also found out about our band. Wow. And was like, hey, Fueled by Ramen, check out this. So it was like, we kind of came at them from a couple different directions. And we did a big tour with Paramore. Our records came out on the same day in 2009. Oh, wow. I
didn't know you did that.
It was awesome. Cool. Amazing band, great people. And then, we did like a little world tour with them. Not world tour, but it was like 4 shows. Hong Kong, Bali, Jakarta, and Singapore. Wow. So like it was almost just like a vacation, and they just like put us up in nice, like almost resort style hotels. We had like days off between shows. And it's wild. So it feels like another lifetime ago. That tour was like 2011. And then we stopped touring and playing in 2015. We did like one last final hurrah. And then all the while I've been kind of recording bands between tours to help pay rent and things like that. And so around 2015, I was like, well, this has to be kind of a full-time thing now. So started recording, producing, mixing bands, and I did a couple big ones, which was cool. A band called Greet Death. They're from, I guess, like the Holly, Davisburg area. Some of them live in Chicago now. But they ended up getting signed to Death Wish Records after the second LP that I did with them. A band called Hot Mulligan. They are just...
Oh, yeah, I know them, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing Reverend guitars like left and right.
That's probably where I know him from. Ken is he's the spoke of a bunch of people for me.
And they were like these young kids from like the Upper Peninsula, came and recorded a couple songs for a split with me.
We're at the Upper Peninsula.
Oh, I don't even know.
Oh, Layla's from our camera ops from the Upper Peninsula.
What town? Okay, I was going to say Escanaba is kind of the only place I know to say into Moonlight.
There's yeah. Thank you, Jeff Daniels.
Yes. No, I don't know where they come from, but like, and I don't think a lot of people know that because that band's very big right now. Like, they're pretty tremendous. Hot Mulligan's doing very, very well, but I don't think a lot of people realize they're kind of secretly Youpers, which is really cool. Because they're just like really cool. Like, and I could say that as like an old weird guy. Like, they're like very cool. Like, they're doing the damn thing. And,
that's awesome.
They came to me and recorded, and they were kind of just like, oh yeah, we liked your band a little bit. Cool. Thanks for the help. And then they came back and did their next EP with me. And I was like, well, you guys are like drawing like 100, 200 people a show. Like, this is big. And they're like, yeah, it's cool. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Like,
that doesn't just happen. Like,
I'm like, this is going well. And then they came and did their full length with me called Pilot, which was like 2017, maybe. I don't really remember. And at that point, they were doing like 300, 400, 500 people. Oof. And I was like, that was the record where I kind of said, all right, I'm going to produce this record, but every like third thing I say, let's throw out the window because you guys obviously know better than I do.
Yeah.
Like what the kids want. So I learned a lot from them, which is rad. And yeah, I mean, now they're like really high build on that Sad Summerfest that's going around, which is almost like a new Warped Tour kind of thing.
Oh.
So yeah, they're just killing it. And I did a couple records for like punk rock bands that I grew up playing with, which is really weird. A band called Much the Same and a band called No Trigger. They were on Nitro Records. They came and recorded with me in like the last 3 or 4 years, which is weird. You know, me playing shows with them in like 2005, 2006, and now they're coming to me to make records. So that was very cool. And then, pandemic-y time hits, and I
somewhere in there you got into pro wrestling too, right?
Oh yeah, that was a weird time.
There's not just sidebar, but I feel like this is before the pedal company too, right? You were like, is this just like I'm tall and
so,
I can do this.
I have a thing where if I like something, I go, well, this now has to be my life.
Oh, it's me. You can't figure that out. I'm
very similar to you, where you have like a workshop for every hobby that you've ever had, and you're working. You have a way to like attack it. With me, it was like, okay, well, I want to be in a band, so cool. I did that. Great.
Did that too. Yeah. Not as boy. None of the success you've had. Holy.
The band was very. We were successful in the fact that we got to do what we wanted to do and see the world. Great.
How do you define that? I mean,
exactly.
I can
look back now and say that.
I think that's super successsul in hindsight. I mean, you got to do some things that most people that play instruments never. I mean, I think some people just playing in a group with your friends is a success, and playing coherent stuff for people and making them happy is great.
Because when I was in the band, I think I was constantly bummed out, being like, why aren't we bigger? Why aren't we making money? And now I look back and I'm just like, being 36, having 2 kids, I'm just like, oh my God, like young me had so much fun and like got to do all this stuff. Like that is so great. And that's all that matters. Bill from The Descendants and Black Flag, he produced one of our records in 2011. And he just said something out of nowhere one day while we were recording and just said like, no one said your band has to be big.
Yeah, no.
And like at that point I was like, oh man, like you're right. And it still didn't quite sink in until later, but it's such a valuable lesson. Like just try to have fun. The most fun I had in the band was the last year when we said we were breaking up. And there was no more pressure to get big.
Exactly.
Because it's over. So one of the things I started lifting weights and kind of getting into that, and also got into wrestling again. I loved pro wrestling as a kid, Just everything about it. You know, I was like watching the first episode of Monday Night Raw, WWF style. The wrestler CM Punk got really big in like 2011, 2012, and he was like a punk rock guy. And like he was kind of like I guess you would call like a side character. Like he didn't do like a whole lot of big stuff with the company. And one day they just gave him a mic and basically said, sit up on the top of that ramp and basically talk shit about the WWE and Vince McMahon and how you deserve better. And they just let him actually go off. And it was like real. And they eventually just cut off his mic. And it was kind of just like this real promo from a punk rock dude. And then he started really blowing up and all the people like got behind him. And we found out he knew our band and liked our band.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, well, now I got to start watching. And, you know, and then he had us come out to a couple shows and, you know, it was just very, very cool. And then I made friends with a couple local wrestlers in like Midland and Saginaw that were like, it's just kind of weird because you see a lot of like VFW style wrestling shows where there's 13 people in the crowd and it's like really haggard and like these guys, like they just haven't hung up their wrestling boots. Like they've been doing it for way too long.
Our FedEx guys used to be a wrestling team, which they might have been phenomenal. They were very nice guys, but they would tell us how they were doing every week or so. And nothing made me happier than getting filled in randomly on like how their pro wrestling career was going as they were like giving us boxes. And it was awesome.
It's a very cool, weird. It's just like punk rock. Like when you're playing like 5 people and like everyone's like, what are you doing with your life? Like same thing with these wrestlers. It's their life.
Yeah.
But these 2 guys that I made friends with, I was like, there's something about these dudes where like, I'm like, they can be big and they will be big. And they're out there doing like big stuff now, which is really, really cool.
It's like theater, you know? I mean,
And that's kind of why I love wrestling. It's just it's like a soap opera with superheroes and muscles, you know?
Yeah.
And not even muscles anymore. Like you can be like this tiny person and just like command an audience. But yeah, around early 2014, I decided I'm going to pro wrestling school, and I had the support of my buddies, and I had the support of my wife said, "Fine."
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like
it. I guess
I feel like that's a weird thing to just spout. Like, I'm doing it. Like it's not like like I've decided I'm going back to school, and everybody in your family's like, yeah, and you're like pro wrestling school, and they're like, oh,
it's basically clown school where you get beat up, and I basically lived in Detroit for like 4 days a week, sleeping on a buddy's couch, and would come home on the weekends just completely. It was like 4 hours, 4 days a week, getting beat up and running, even just running back and forth against the ropes of a wrestling ring hurts.
Yeah.
Like it's like steel cables wrapped
in tape. You're still moving. I mean, you're still,
and it's like the craziest exercise. And then I ended up not being able to finish the course anyway because my band was going on tour in the UK, and pretty much as I left and I was like, and I'll be back for the next session. I'll come back and finish. I already knew. I was like, I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't for me. I can't start a whole new life that is being gone.
Yeah.
Because, and then on that tour in the UK, I turned to my brother, who's our drummer, and I said, you think we're about done here? And he was like, I do. And I was like, it's good, right? Like, it's good right now. Like, this is a good tour. We're having fun. But I think we're about done. And he was like, yep, let's do another year. Let's call it. And I was like, okay. And that was literally the conversation. I remember sitting on this couch and basically being like, hey, should we do this? And yeah, and that's when basically my wrestling dreams died then. And I was like, okay, I'm happy to know that I don't need to be a wrestler. I can just enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of things in my life I have to remember. I was going to start a hot sauce company during the pandemic because I made my own hot sauce one time and it wasn't good. And I was like, I got my own Wonder hot sauce company going. And no. So like I had to tell myself, you don't need the hot sauce company.
I identify with this conversation a lot.
It is a certain personality type. And that's the thing too. I think for most of my life, I didn't have that. And then I got some kind of, not like a toxic ego about these things, but I got the confidence, like the ego in me was like, well, I did this, I can probably do this. And then
it gets easier the more you do certain things, and
but the one thing that really changed my life was when, so kind of like what you said, the getting into the pedal world, but I came from a band world. Like, what was the transition there?
Yeah.
I always wanted a signature model something.
Yeah.
And I always wanted a signature model guitar, but my band really never got big enough. I always wanted a signature model pedal, but like, I didn't have like a signature sound really. I had a couple things that I would want. And my buddy, Andy, he had a company called Camel Tone Electronics. And
I know them. Yeah.
he had a pedal called the Nard, just a bunch of great names.
Yeah.
And just such a nice dude. And he played with a band called the Super Weeks, and I played some shows with him, and we talked, we stayed in touch. And then I kind of said, hey, what do you know about getting pedals made in China or having them rebranded or whatever? And he was like, how about you just do it yourself? And I'm like, well, I can't. I don't know how to solder. And he goes, buy a soldering iron. And he actually sent me one of his circuit boards with all the parts and an enclosure.
Yeah.
He was selling kits for his own pedal and was like, build my pedal, build a Nard pedal. And he made a video on, how to do it, basically an instruction manual. And I was like, well, this will be a fun dad hobby to do at midnight after my kids sleep. And after I got that thing put together, I was just like, oh my goodness. Like you could feel this visceral, like I created this.
Yeah.
Like almost like that Tim Allen in Home Improvement, like, like, like burn myself a few times, stab myself with like a resistor lead, but whatever, like I did it. And
it's like a jigsaw puzzle, it really is. Once you get it, you're like, oh, I see the picture now.
It's like a Rector set, like, it's like, but
And then you start looking at you look at a schematic and you start, there's where the signal goes and here's where the tone drips off. And like you start to like, it starts to click and it's almost like knowing another language, I think. I think of it as.
It's very cool. And I remember like going to bed like that night and looking up what a resistor was and what a capacitor was and what a diode was. And I was like, I need to memorize what they look like and what they do. And that was like, it's so funny to think about now because it's just like, it's like common sense almost now. It's like the back of my hand. But I remember being like, I want to learn this stuff.
Yeah.
And and then of course, the whole hot sauce thing, like
didn't work out.
I made one bottle of bad hot sauce and I had to tell myself, don't make a hot sauce company now.
Yeah.
Like, eat your crappy hot sauce and call it good, move on. With the pedals, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I might have to start a pedal company now. I built that one. It sounds pretty good and it felt pretty good. And then I did everything I could to figure out the right people to talk to about how to get it going. Yeah. And it took me like a little bit of time to figure out, these people will powder coat the enclosures. This person will do the art for me. Maybe I don't have to drill my own enclosures anymore because someone else can do it with the CNC.
And then they're perfect every time.
Oh yeah, it's so nice. So yeah, there was just like all this stuff that kind of just started happening. And then when the lockdown happened, I had learned to solder 3 months before. So I basically was like, I'm going to make an Instagram account for Wonder Effects, which I said was going to be like my recording studio's fun little pedal offshoot.
And what was your first pedal? Was it the Red Ryder?
That was the first idea I had for a pedal. But it was the Onederdrive.
Oh, was it?
Which was kind of funny. It was supposed to be the Red Ryder, but I screwed it up so bad and then kept telling the guys who were designing my circuit boards, I messed up. Get rid of this knob completely. Fix this knob at max. And then I was like ripping diodes out and like changing chips and just haphazardly changing things out of frustration. And I came up with the Onederdrive, which was like a 2-knob pedal essentially and one switch. The switch came later because I was trying to fix something that I did not solve that problem, but it ended up making another cool sound.
Nice. What is it?
That's actually this OnderBolt side over here.
Okay,
so yeah.
And you have and this is the.
Yeah, that's the standalone of the. So the Onederdrive eventually became the OnderBolt. So that plus and minus toggle is basically op amp clipping or the diode clipping, and the diode clipping was me trying to solve something which was like a ragged, crackly decay.
Yeah.
And I did not solve that, but it did a really cool form of clipping that I've never heard or seen before. And I don't quote me on that, but like 3 asymmetrical silicon diodes and an LED diode at the end for no reason. I don't think that that's a thing that people go to, especially when you're starting off with the pedal design. But when I was just plugging in random diodes,
breadboarding stuff together,
and I just was socketing every combination I could. And then when I played it, I was just like, whoa, this diode configuration changed the EQ curve. Like it went from this full explosive, almost muffy distortion at max, flipped to that, and it kind of did this nice little like parametric curve. It rolled off some of the highs, it rolled off some of the lows.
Yeah.
It was like this, it was almost like a vintage switch.
Yeah.
And I actually call that switch the Billy switch. So it goes from Billy Corgan to Billy Gibbons.
Oh, I was hoping it was Joel.
Billy Joel is the new setting I have. There's Mark 1 and Mark 2 on the new OnderBolt, which was another accident. So that whole pedal, it's kind of like the one I'm most proud of because it's not based on anything. And it was like one of the first things that I really ever did.
And this one isn't out yet,
Not
right?
yet.
It's coming soon. Like these are both like on their way.
Yeah, August 17th is when those are going to come out. I opened it early to my mailing list people because, full disclosure, I was broke and scared. And I was like, does anybody want my pedals that aren't out yet? Because I don't have the time to wait 2 months for demos and more enclosures and blah, blah, blah. And it did very well.
Yeah.
And I was very surprised and I'm super happy. Like my people are so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Mark 1, Mark 2 was another happy accident where there's a 22K resistor that basically tells you where like how much of a mid bump you get.
Okay.
And it was like an engineered mid bump. It wasn't like one of those that just naturally is there like a tube screamer. This is in a special place and I put it there on purpose. And one time it switched to a 20K resistor by accident.
Yeah.
And I told
those little bands are hard to see.
Yeah. And basically it was like just done by the person making the circuit board. I thought that was an arbitrary amount. And I'm like, no, it has to be 22.
Yeah.
And I swore I heard the difference. And that's why I checked.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not. I could have just been freaking out. But I just ripped that resistor out at one point and I went to 100K because it's like almost like a knob.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 100K was maxed. And I was like, let's max this baby out. And I got this high end and sustain and basically gain that I really wanted. And I went, whoa, like what are the chances?
Yeah.
I thought it was just going to spike the mids.
Yeah.
But it did this just awesome lift that to me made the pedal even better to the point where I was like, I kind of want to just make that the new circuit.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm going to put it on a switch in case anybody wants the old classic OnderDrive sound. So it's almost like a bright, dark switch.
Yeah.
But it adds some gain and some cool character. So yeah, the OnderBolt kind of became a thing. And then the Wonderwall side, it's the same exact circuit as that standalone pedal.
Yeah.
But the Wonderwall wouldn't have existed until I got that OnderBolt circuit down.
So this is the MK12 switch then there? Or is that?
There's like that, right in the middle of all
right
the
down
knobs.
here.
It's a little baby one that I had to sneak in.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, on this pedal with the stacking, I usually like it flipped down, which is like technically the MK2 setting.
Yeah,
I think it just says boost on this particular pedal. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those things where I was like, I don't want to add another big old switch and change all the artwork again. So like I hit up everybody. I'm like, I got to put in one more switch. I figured it out last minute.
Yeah.
And people that I've heard from so far, because there's about 80 Wonderwalls out in the world and it's technically not out yet, which is very cool for me. It's like I get a lot of cool feedback. And yeah, people were like, oh, I love both. Like flip it up, flip it down. It does different stuff. Because I wasn't sure if it even needed it. And I don't want to add extra knobs and switches if people don't need them. But yeah, people really started getting back to me about that circuit. And it's kind of wild. Yeah, the OnderBolt, it kind of goes from like a mid-heavy boost, kind of does a tube screamery thing if you put it in front of a dirty amp or another pedal. But then I personally like it with the gain almost all the way maxed. It's just very fuzzy, very distorty. And it's like a new flavor, like people say, hey, where would that go in my board? I want it to replace my blah, 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 or should it replace? And I'm like, you got to figure out where it goes in your own chain, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
and like
that's every pedal though.
Like if you're buying that and you're like, I want a pedal to replace my Klon, does it sound like a Klon? I'm like, it might to you. Like if you blindfolded yourself and I played you, I can tell you this is a clown. You might believe me. Like that's kind of like the snake oil of this business. So like I just tell people it's not based on anything. The EQ curves are pretty unique and the breakup is unique. And I've heard a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's for those people that just want that something new on their board. And it's not like it's like some crazy innovation that's going to change the world, but it's just a different dirt.
Yeah.
And it's
So
very cool.
I think the first pedal I ever saw, I think Ken Haas had a Red Ryder.
Yeah.
And I was at the demo place at Reverend and talking with him. He's like, "Oh, this is a cool pedal." And that was probably all we really said. And then I didn't, and then like a couple years later, you were just like, hit me up and like, "Hey, I think I want to have dealers." And I don't know how many you have now, but I don't, there's not many. It's just a couple of us.
You're the only dealer.
Am I?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I feel so special.
One, B's music is so approachable and rad that like to the point where people would write me all the time and say, "I brought my pedal to blah, blah, blah shop.
Really?
They really liked it. You should hit them up." And then I would hit them up. And then they would say like, "Yeah, I don't know, blah, 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 blah." And I'm like, "Cool, let's stay in touch." When a friend of mine brought a Red Ryder up here, he said, "Blah, blah, 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 blah. B's music really liked it. Hit him up." And I said, "Well, okay then." So I did. And then it was like, "Hey, cool. Let's hang out. Let's meet up. Bring us some of your pedal. We'll be a dealer." And I was like, "Oh, this actually worked. Like, this is very cool."
I like really small companies that want to have a dealer because I feel like, we do Boss and we do all, an EHX and all these like massive lines. And like, I feel like it's more fun for me as we get, we got to this point where we were stocking like 500-600 pedals. And there were people we did business with and like, I got to be friends with them and like, and it's just like you feel like you got an insight into their thing and it's not you're just one of 100 places they shovel this shit out of. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like,
it's awesome.
I really, one thing in being through this like pedal growth we've had, I really like having smaller companies in some ways, even if like, and I sell your pedals every time we get them and we sell right through them because you don't have 500 dealers who are also just shoveling shit as hard as they can into a furnace. Right. And like, I kind of like that where it's like, I feel like you, I mean, when you made this, like you texted me, "Hey, I think I'm going to make this." And it's like kind of fun that I know what's going on and I feel like in the loop. And it's just, I think it's a lot more interesting for us and we get a lot more like connection to it and the people here. And like, we do, social media together and we do those things. Like it just feels a lot more like true to what I feel like this industry is kind of supposed to be. I mean, like Reverend's another thing. Like, I started dealing Reverend when they had 3 people. It was, Ken, Zach, and Joe, and, Zach Green, not even there's Zach Ward now too. And, it's like, you just kind of get in with these companies and you start hanging out with them and you're like, we used to go play, pool every year at the NAMM show with Penny and Ken and Joe. Cool. And like, and then they also, your friends make your favorite stuff, and
it is cool. Yeah.
It's just like, I've been in this industry 25 years and it's like, things like that to me, like the fact that I have that guitar and it has my logo on the back of the headstock for me is like, that's like a peak moment of my career.
I also hate that I love this guitar so much because when I like a guitar a lot, I have to buy it or buy one like it.
They're gone. I made 8.
Then now I just got to get a slightly not cool version, but it's probably still going to play great.
Or Ken could make more. That would be, we'd be in.
Because the color's great. I love the pickups. And even I'm not even a reverse headstock guy. I am on this guitar, So
I told him I'd only do them if we could flip the headstock, and they're all reverses. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I was born in '81, and I just
that's what we did. Right?
Yeah, it's just in the '80s we flipped them all over, and I don't know. I didn't like them at first, and then as I started being more and more of a player, they just grew on me, and now. I think in some ways I've been in this industry so long that like I like some of the I don't want a black guitar. I don't want this. I like going down like, flip my headstock upside down. Give me this, give me that. Let's make it weird. One pickup. Usually I'm one pickup all the time. And
people like one pickup. That's what drives me crazy are when people think that the middle position on a guitar is default, which I think is honestly the worst sounding pickup combination usually. Sometimes they can sound very good. But yeah, when people would like record with me and they would just like pop it in the middle, and I'm like, "Hey, so what you doing there on that Les Paul?" And it's just this like, and I'm like, "Do you listen to rock and roll?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Cool, bridge pickup, move it on down. And then I'm like, oh, do you want to solo like Slash or like play some Midwestern emo, whatever? Cool. Yeah, now neck. Now go to the neck. And like middle is kind of like and see, that's all you need.
This is,
rock and roll.
Matt West, I ran into him at the NAMM show, and this is his signature model. And I kind of thanked him for, letting us make a Bees version of his guitar. And I go, I just love one pickup guitars, reverse headstock, tremolo. I'm like, you hit all the buttons for Reverend that are my favorites. And he's like, yeah, that thing's just 4 chords in the truth. And I've loved it ever since he said that. That's what I think of. I have a pink one of these, and this was the one that was made for me. So it's like my favorite guitar in my own color with my headstock on it, and that's so as close as I'll ever get to a signature.
We're doing it the right way. I'm telling you. You just got to kind of have your own stuff made without having to put in like that kind of work. Like the grueling, you have to be popular. Like, no way. I can't do that. That's too much pressure. Like, I'm at the point in my life where like, if I do anything where I'm putting myself out there and be like, oh, I hope someone likes me, I'm out. Like, that's terrifying. Like, I think I had like some kind of, like a little bit like delusion of grandeur, like when I was in my 20s in my band, and also just like a wall, like really thick skin where like nothing mattered, who cares. And now I'm just like, now that I'm, a homebody and a dad, I'm just like, oh my goodness, if anybody says anything mean, like I am out of here. Like I'm running. So
drop your mean comment below.
Yeah. If someone drops a mean comment, I will 1, cry, 2, might try to find out where they live.
Oh, don't do that.
That's fun.
That's nah.
I want.
You're like one of those guys. You're like, in the background, there's a calendar, and the calendar is from a gas station. And now I know you live in Albuquerque.
That sounds great. I love true crime. I want to be part of one someday.
I'll only be the victim.
I know. I'm afraid. I feel like I've been alive so many years. There's bound to be a crime happening to me soon.
Yeah.
Like I've hit that point. It's like I've evaded crimes for a while.
Yeah.
So I think one's coming. But I don't know. Yeah, I live out in like the middle of a cornfield. It's pretty well guarded, and people don't really come there for no reason. So
I love that you live next door to Tim, head of the lesson program's mom, which we didn't find out till after you'd been here.
How
and we were
weird.
mailing you something, and Tim just goes, that's my mom's street. That's next door to my mom. And then I texted you and said, do you live next door? Like, I think you live next door to one of our employees' moms. And you go, is her dog named Harrison? And I look over at Tim and go, does your mom have a dog and his name's Harrison? And you go, he goes, yeah.
That's so weird.
What a world.
What are the chances? Like, I mean, there's like a handful of houses even on my stretch of my road. It's a dirt road, and it's like really few and far between. So yeah, the fact that it was like literally the next door house was very crazy. I love that small world stuff. Sometimes I don't know if people appreciate that stuff as much as I do, and sometimes it really isn't that cool. But to me, I'm just like, I just can't believe it. Like, we live in a simulation. So yeah, there's some cool stuff.
But like I've changed my own brakes. I grew up. I was a farm kid. I grew up.
So jealous.
Yeah.
I wish I had some kind of like.
I don't touch my cars now. I don't touch them.
No.
I buy new cars, and then like I don't want to. Like, what is zero weight oil? What is that? I don't know what that is. It's got to weigh something.
I don't even know what regular oil is.
Oh. My tractors take straight weight 30, which is like, so you have multi-grade oil.
I did that diet before. Straight weight 30. It sounds like a cool way of eating. 30 calories a day. You'll get your weight straight away. I don't know what that means.
So oil, when it's hot, like you have like 10W30.
Mm-hmm.
So like when it's cold, it's lighter, and then it gets thicker as it gets hot. Like it gets so like when your engine's cold, it sloshes around more, but like when it's really up and moving, it's like, does that make sense?
Yeah,
multi-way oil.
I like coconut oil.
Yeah,
that's my favorite oil to eat. Not just raw, but you could eat coconut oil when it's cold.
We're gonna do another series where I teach you to work on vintage tractors.
Oh my God, I would love it.
That would be fun. And then you're like, now I'm a tractor guy.
If I had the time and the capacity, like that would be like my thing. I'd be like, hey man, get me a tractor to work on.
I think I have this fascination for like old devices though. Like you know,
That's
I
cool.
fixed you see me do all these videos with like old delay units and these things, and it's because like and you saw my like where I have all my tube electronics and like I work on that stuff, and like I think I just get this fascination for like dead technology because like I'll never build a microprocessor. Like I can program, like I can code, and I've coded in like Python and like and I built little like smart devices and like burned the like little chips and stuff, and like it's kind of like Raspberry Pi. I forget, it's like ESP86 something. But I was like making my own smart devices in the house for a while and like soldering them. They're not. It's very easy. I could teach you to do it in like an hour. It's very very easy. But it's I get this fascination with like these like old machines and like some of the things like old tractors and things. It's like pneumatic, all that stuff. It's just
when there's moving parts and you can actually take something apart and then remember how to put it back together. It's like a really gratifying thing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. As a kid, I never did. Like
Really?
I never tinkered. I never fixed anything. Like in my household, if something broke, we called the guy to come fix it. Like there was never any kind of like DIY going on. And it's not like a knock to my parents, but like that's just kind of how they rolled. You know, they were busy people. So yeah, when I got a little older, like I was kind of like thrown out into the world, and I was like, I'm actually going to learn how to do some of this stuff. So
little Brian just took everything apart. If it stopped working, just like smashed it apart with a hammer and then figured out what was inside. And like, I mean, I can remember like fixing so when I was like a teenager, my dad bought a vintage pinball machine and it was always breaking. And I started just like learning how to the light bulb wire is off. So when the wire goes to the light bulb works again. And like,
that's cool.
Some things like that. And that's like where like my start with electronics was like literally like wrist deep in a pinball machine. And like, I want to play pinball and my dad's pinball machine doesn't work and nobody knows how it works. And there was a manual in it that explained like a service manual that kind of like laid it out a little bit. And then that was like how I got into electronics. And then I went to like Votech school and like high school and like would kind of go haunt and ask a lot of questions about that. And I built like a tube preamp in there, and then
that's cool.
And then I came to work here at the music store that was here before I owned this, and like they were like, "Oh, you know how to solder?" And then they just like fix guitar electronics and like which are very simple. I mean, really one of the simplest circuits you could do. And then I would just start messing with pedals, or you start learning everything's just dirty and breaking, and it's really like everything's just falling, everything rots and everything dies, and you're just trying to put sandbags against the dam.
Same with our bodies. I
speaking of middle age,
no, I'm starting to feel it too. I got into this stuff so much later in life, and now it's like I can hack into a guitar and like mod things and change, but I still don't, not with my own guitars. And I'm even kind of technically starting a guitar company, and I am going to be a little bit more hands-on building Wonder guitars.
Yeah.
But with my own guitars, I just don't trust myself. And it's almost like I could YouTube some videos and probably cut my own hair, but I am going to let someone else do it who can, who's just been doing it longer. So I know that it's done right.
I think you would do it and then start a cut your own hair company.
I'd probably go to barber school.
Yeah, I could see that.
A cut your own hair company. From Wayne's World, the suck cut.
Yeah.
Do you remember that thing?
Yeah.
The vacuum that you just throw on. Wayne's World. Do you know Wayne's World? Okay, cool.
Okay, we're just,
Yeah, your dad was in a band. Early 90s rock and roll movies.
So let's circle back around. So you have the original Onderdrive, and then you have Old Blue and Red Ryder. So those pedals come shortly after. And what are those what are the thought processes behind those?
The Red Ryder, which eventually I failed and then created the Onderdrive, and it was great. The Red Ryder, the part that I couldn't get right, I basically said, hey, I was making some Rat clones. I wonder if I could put the distortion section from a Rat into the Red Ryder, which had a wet dry blend, and it has like a diode selection switch and a low end contour, that. And I was like, ooh, yeah, all those things would be really nice with a Rat. So it's not a very innovative idea, but in my head, that was why I wanted to start this pedal company. Was I want a ratty pedal that sounds better at low gain, has the wet dry blend, so it's awesome on bass, kind of almost like a little bass preamp thing, and the low end contour if you want like a little bit more beef with single coils and things like that. Just really simple. And when I put out the Red Ryder, I was like, yes, this is pretty much it sounds so different than the Onderdrive, even though the Onderdrive, the idea was supposed to be something like the Red Ryder, but completely changed. And then because of the Red Ryder, which was a Christmas Story reference, you know, the Red Ryder BB gun, he calls his gun also Old Blue at one point.
Oh.
And I said, that'd be really cool to call a pedal Old Blue, and it'll be like sort of like the lower gain sibling.
Yeah.
And also Blues Breaker, Blues Driver. There's a lot of Blue pedals that do a lower gain thing. And even though it's not really based on either of those two pedals, it can kind of sound like it. So it was kind of like a nice little nod in the right direction. Like, this is kind of what it does.
Yeah.
And I pretty much made that pedal for myself. And I was like, I can release this, but it's not right. So I waited probably like a year and a half into it. And I finally got it where I wanted it to be. And what's funny is the diode selection switch on there, there's like a symmetrical and an asymmetrical thing. And the asymmetrical thing is a lot like the one on the OnderBolt.
Yeah.
But there was a mistake because I passed along that schematic and the circuit board files to like 3 different designers over the course of the year that I was working on it. And something got lost in translation, or they thought I had made a mistake, and the symmetrical clipping section is not supposed to be symmetrical, but it is now. And I played through it and I said, something's wrong, but it's better. Awesome.
Nice.
So I wrote them up and I said, hey, did you screw this up? And they're like, oh yeah, man, I'm sorry. I'm like, thank you for doing that, because it's better now and this pedal's ready. So it was kind of like a lot of happy accidents happen, especially when you're like me and you have no idea what you're doing as far as electrical engineering or design or anything like that. Like, I'm a musician. I use my ears and it's like a feel thing.
Yeah.
And also like the low end contour on that Old Blue is a lot like the one on the Red Ryder, but it like just wasn't working. And I ended up just changing it I changed the value of one of the pots. I think it's like a C10K pot. And I was just like, whatever. And it still just wasn't doing the thing I wanted it to do. But I personally found it super useful going from 0, which was just like flat EQ, to all the way up, which was just like a nice amount of heft.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a very subtle change to the point where like, you might think that the knob's not doing anything, but if you turn up the gain a bit and you turn up that knob as you're playing, you're like, oh, that is just that little bit that I might need.
Yeah.
So it's a very cool, weird, subtle knob. So yeah, Old Blue is like, I would say it's my best pedal, just because I think everybody who plays guitar and uses pedals can find a use for it, whether it's an always on. A lot of people use it as an always on. It's their boost at the beginning. Use it to kind of crank up a little bit, get some cool gainy textures. And it sounds really good at high gain too. It's kind of like a transparent overdrive.
Yeah.
But I pretty much changed it so it's not transparent. Like, you know when it's on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it does all the things that these transparent overdrives out there do that I think people like, which is like add some grit and sparkle. But
low gain pedals are just great. Like, I think there's a lot of people who just hear that and go, no, I don't want low. I want high, bigger, better. And
yeah.
Low gain pedals, I think, just do so much more texturally, and they're so much more interesting. I mean, anything can be destroyed, but it's something else to take it and just give it a little, you know, put a little paprika in it or something, you know.
Yes.
Like,
and because I'm a punk rock guy, you know, I listen to like intense music. I was like, the first thing I want to change about any kind of circuit that's like transparent is like, when you hit it, I want there to be enough heft that you are like, oh, it's on now.
Yeah.
And there's nothing against those, like, you know, lower gain, just like, yep, it did change the sound a little. I'm a big fan of like, oh yeah, it changed the sound a lot.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like what's the opposite of transparent? Opaque. An opaque overdrive. That sounds like not so glamorous though. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, I designed that pedal for me and was so happy to be able to put it in my line.
Yeah.
Because I was like, if everything else in my pedal line got discontinued, I think that's the one that would stay. Along with like the OnderBolt circuit, because that's like my You can call it flagship, but like, I don't know. I'm not flying any flags. I'm kind of just like making pedals.
It's the one you just like, like this is the one that anybody could toss in a pedal board and find a use for, like no matter what they play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Do you want to play around with some of them for a little bit here?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so we're gonna go through the Wonderwall. So this is we're on the Onederdrive side.
Yeah, now
So
called the OnderBolt.
The OnderBolt
But
side,
to make it even more confusing, it's just called Channel 2 on the Wonderwall.
which is on the left side.
Yep.
So it goes 2-1,
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's in the order of
The order.
the signal chain.
unless you hit the switch and then it's the other order.
But let's make it even more confusing. I personally wanted the Wonderbolt to be on this side because it just makes sense to me flow wise.
Yeah.
But it was gonna take too long to switch it on the circuit board to mirror image it, and I said no, it's fine.
They can deal. They can deal.
That's how excited I was about the pedal. I was like, I don't even care about that. Let's just leave it as is. Get me a prototype. And then the prototype was great. Made a couple tweaks, but yeah, the Wonderbolt kind of has a little bit of a mid-rangey thing to it, and it goes from boosty to fuzzy. So
That's our gain.
and then yeah, this is like when it gets a little bit fuzz distortion-y. I hate that word, but yeah.
Yeah. What does that switch do?
That's like the diode switch, the kind of vintage modern. Call it the Billy switch. Kind of Billy Corgan was that what you just heard?
Yeah.
And then Billy Gibbons was. It's one of those pedals, like I tell people, don't be afraid to turn the gain all the way up. Like it loves it. Like the op amp in it wants to be fed. Like give it all the gain. But yeah.
So then can we hear the fuzz without? Like
yeah. If you want to hit that one, and so
this one's a nice rose color.
Oh yes. So yeah, this is kind of like the big Muffy side. Yeah, and right now it's on the kind of scooped traditional EQ curve. And it kind of sits between a ram's head and a Russian muff.
Yeah.
I just split the difference between the values essentially, and what came out was exactly my taste. Like it's exactly what I wanted. So it worked out. Fun fact about Bush for you. In Canada, they are known as Bush X because there was already an artist called Bush.
Really?
And the bass player in my band casually just went, oh, blah, 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 like that song, blah, 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 Bush X. And I'm like, what did you just say? Pretty much everybody will say Bush X.
Really?
There. Yeah, one of those things.
It's like how chips are fries in the UK.
Yep, it's true. You got chips. Have you ever heard of a chip butty?
No.
It's like buddy, like a buttered sandwich. Bread, butter, French fries. And like you could buy them at a kebab shop at 2 a.m. It's like a drunk people food. A chips butty.
I find it hard to believe in my lifetime there's a drunk people food I haven't had, but and that may be just a testament to there was a point in the night when that happened, but it's no longer in here. So
yeah, it happens to the best of us. So yeah, did I switch that thing? So yeah, that was kind of the scooped, the classic scooped. And
okay, so this is the different EQ curve.
My favorite is right in the middle, and it's a little bit of a flatter EQ and a little bit more heft and a little bit more gain.
Nice.
And then just to be really stupid, there's kind of an old classic muff mod that removes the first two diodes.
Oh yeah.
And it really kicks the low end into high gear to the point of like, whoa, what's going on? And I'm going to change the EQ a little bit. Turn up the gain a little bit. There we go.
I think they call that woolly.
Oh yeah,
Woolly.
it's a mammoth of a sound.
Yeah, that's nasty in a good way. Like not a Janet Jackson way, but like a good way.
Right. Yeah, there we go. It sounds a little bit better now.
Yeah.
You got to let that high end kind of creep through because there's so much low end.
So, and then we can combine these, right?
Yes.
Let's try that. Because then I'm going to throw a curveball at you.
So when I combine them, I kind of like to keep the gain a little bit lower on both because it's so much.
Yeah.
But,
You don't want to destroy it.
Yes. But yeah, you kind of get a little bit of a metally, scoopy kind of thing. There we go.
Nice. That's thick as shit.
And yeah, that was very accidental. Like the fact that those would work together that way.
And then if you can swap them like right here, right? So
Yeah.
what does it happens if you just
Push it toward me.
there we go. That's why it's not working. I'm gonna break your pedal.
That's okay. We'll figure out how well it does on the rigors of the road. It's like two dudes drinking coffee.
So is this the other direction for this guy?
I just got it switched over. And the one thing, if you do have channel 1 first and then the Onderbolt side second, you kind of want all the settings that let the most kind of high end and gain through. So the plus side and then this little boost switch in the middle down. And I actually dime the EQ.
So this is the secret sauce setting for this way.
Yeah, you just want as much goodness to come through because the distortion side likes to eat the muff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You kind of want to have it set up accordingly.
Blown out, like, yeah.
Like it's very,
awesome.
That's kind of like my pick for kind of like the doomy sounding electric wizard. You know, like when people like to partake in the cannabis, like I feel like this is that kind of sound. But you know, not that I would ever do anything like that. That is, my mom would not let me. So. Yeah. So yeah, pretty gnarly. Yeah.
That's pretty gnarly for a pedal with flowers on it. So let's do this. Grab the bass. All right, so let's go back. Let's go back to the original way.
All right.
Let's.
So yeah, we got the.
This is the muff.
This is
unnamed muff. Let's see.
Let's get that gain.
Let's first time. I think it works. Because this came out of somebody said, how does it sound on bass? And you go, I don't know.
I actually have never, I have a bass hanging up on the wall right next to me where I tested this thing out over and over again. Never used a bass.
That like woolly setting, yeah.
That's a good sound.
gain just a little bit. It works. So now we just need to get Mike Watt playing one of these with one of those.
It does sound really cool. It makes me want this bass too. Oh yeah, I wanted to hear I may have told people that this setting on the muff side was really good for bass, and I just said that theoretically. So,
well, I mean, that's all the way up. Yep.
Okay, so that's all the way up. So
I switched it to that after we turned on the second one. So
nice.
Yeah, I was figuring that setting was the one.
There it is.
Yeah. I think we did it. We did the science.
Ooh, I do like the middle though. It's like
Yeah.
that splits the difference.
Nice.
I'm in.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is our game.
Yeah.
I'm starting to learn your symbols for things.
Right, it gets a little silly. Yeah, the gain
EQ.
from noon and like lower is like in my nice, literally like the center is my mid,
Yeah.
and then
yeah.
it's my lower gain settings to the left, and then there's like a really sudden boost when you start coming up into the high gain sounds though.
And what's this anvil?
That's the weight contour.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, anvil weight. Yes,
Makes sense. There's all the way down. Let us bring it up. Yeah, it's real subtle.
Yeah, you can kind of hear like it changes the gain structure a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not like a traditional like
It's not a
low
bass knob.
EQ
Yeah,
knob.
yeah.
It sounds really good left at noon. I personally keep it almost all the way off, unless I feel like I need a little bit of heft. But
Yeah.
humbucker is like not super.
Sweet. And then this is our clipping diodes again. Just
Yeah.
So-
So that one was kind of the smoother one, and this one it opens it up and adds some bite, and you can get a little bit chuggier, dare I say?
yeah.
Yeah, I usually bring down the high end a little bit when I switch to that, and I do boost the gain. So
Yeah.
this is my low gain overdrive, but it's it definitely gets up there, so.
I like that you're playing full bar chords and it's ringing true all the way out, which I think like there's a lot of pedals, people, that's why, I said I like low gain pedals, that you can do that. I think it's just a good barometer or good measurement of like a good low gain pedal to be able to do that.
Yeah,
So.
it has like that nice string separation where you can kind of hear what every string is doing. And sometimes, it's like you can't really help it, but certain guitars, certain pedals, they do have these frequencies that can create some mud or, just cover up what you're trying to do. And yeah, with Old Blue, I've kind of found that it's hard to make it sound bad. It really likes to cut, and there's a lot of high end on tap, and yeah, the diode selector switch really helps when you're switching between guitars or
Nice.
if you're stacking with something else. So Yeah, it's kind of that really is my Swiss Army knife in my line.
We're doing let's do Heckboy. This is your, so this came about, like, this was like has a parent that was like a pro wrestling pedal or something, right?
Oh, okay. So it started off, a buddy of mine, when I was in wrestling school.
Yeah.
I got to know him, and he goes by the name Danhausen.
Okay.
And he started doing like a kind of like a signature coffee roast with my brother's coffee company.
Oh yeah, you told me about this.
And and it started doing very well because he had like a pretty rabid following. And I jokingly said, "Hey, cool, now do you want to do a fuzz pedal?" And he was like, "I don't know what that is, but yeah."
So he doesn't play guitar?
No.
Oh, I thought he was like a guitar playing wrestler. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so all the guitar, some of them were guitar prop guys.
Hulk Hogan with his guitar and, all those videos. No, yeah, Danhausen is a big music fan, a hardcore kid, likes metal, punk rock and all that. And I kind of said, let's put your face on a fuzz pedal. And I've been working on this circuit, which is basically the Heckboy circuit.
Yeah.
And I said, let's just put your face on it, and let's call it Fuzzhausen, because he adds Hausen to like everything. That's kind of one of his like gimmicks or whatever. And he was like, sure, yeah, cool. And I'm thinking maybe over time I'll sell like 30 of these to guitar playing wrestling fans or just collectors.
The Venn diagram of those people.
Yeah. And flash forward, I think we sold 550 Fuzzhausens.
Oh my God.
It was wild. Absolutely insane. So yeah, thank you, Danhausen, for giving me that opportunity, which wasn't really supposed to be anything major, but we were both really shocked and excited about it. And
that was the pedal that became the Heckboy?
Yeah.
Or was that a completely different pedal?
Yeah, no, same thing. So basically the Fuzzhausen had to be discontinued because he ended up signing a really big TV contract with the AEW.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, okay, all outside merchandise kind of needs to stop, which is understandable. Though we, wink, wink, have some left over every now and then. So if people follow me, they might be able to, find a Fuzzhausen here and there. So yeah, the Heckboy, I finally got to, brand it what I wanted to call it all along before Danhausen came along. And the only changes we made were we made these trim pots accessible from the bottom.
Oh, nice.
I just ruined the shot.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's taped to this vintage amp.
But there is like a volume trim and like an oscillation trim with a small screwdriver. If you tweak it lightly, you can.
That's why it comes with a screwdriver.
Yep. Yeah. And I was like, I'll give people a screwdriver so they don't destroy the pedal with like some big tool or, trying to shove a toothpick in there or something.
And then if they do, you get to go, we voided your warranty with your dad's screwdriver.
Yes, exactly. And I only had one person completely destroy the trim pots so far, so it's not too bad.
They tried to unscrew it out like a light bulb or something.
Yeah, I have no idea how they could have done it. But and then we added this little like gain switch in the bottom, because I'm all about trying to just fit in more weird low profile switches.
Yeah.
And so it's the original Fuzzhausen sound plus another just blown out spitty laser gunny
and this thing
version.
Like goes crazy. Every time I've heard somebody play through it, it's going nuts.
Yeah, so that green channel is basically the main fuzz. And then when you switch it to the red mode, there is a constant drone oscillation happening. And you can fight through it with your guitar. You can manipulate it with your knobs and switches. And it's just a noisemaker. Have fun and be annoying, whatever you want. And
which is the main like goal of every pedal.
I think so. There's certain people who want their pedals to be very useful and sound nice in a recording, and then other people who want to, blow up amps and make their parents really mad. So this is great for both, I think.
If you can't annoy your bandmates, why did you buy it?
Exactly. So yeah,
let's hear it.
Yeah. So that's kind of the main fuzz. Also, it's very quiet. It's kind of a gated thing.
Yeah.
And then flip that.
The transistor collapse.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
Nice.
the oscillation, this is just what it sounds like. So, and you can kind of take it off here, but you can kind of just let the chords ring out, and the drone wants to fight through it.
So, in your volume control sets the note, right?
Yeah. So yeah, you can kind of see.
What does the Reverend's bass knob do? I bet that'll do like a fine tune.
Yeah, and depending on what your knobs and switches and the variables and everything, you're going to get some weird things. So you can kind of make a bunch of weird noise without getting down to your pedal board. As long as there's not a buffer between you and the pedal, that's the only thing that can kind of kill that.
Yeah, it's like an input impedance thing, right?
Yes.
Or something. Because I just know this from designing my own things through the years and doing it wrong.
Yeah, that's exactly where this came from.
Yeah, I had a feeling. I've done it before where I'm like, wow, this okay. And then you figure out why you did something wrong at the input impedance, and you're just like, let's do it.
And with that sort of drone happening, you can get some kind of weird octavey effects and things like that.
Yeah.
And then bringing down the volume knob is pretty much the only way if you want to reduce the gain, because this is minimum gain is
no input, no output.
Yeah, so it's almost like a Stooges kind of like cool, nasty, ratty sort of overdrive.
Get that jangle in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like a fun little beastie box.
Heckboy.
Yes.
All right. So let's do the Red Ryder. This was the pedal I originally heard about you on.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just punch my microphone. So this is similar to the Old Blue, but higher gain is what you were kind of saying earlier with when you're talking about the Old Blue. So
yeah, it's got an LM308 in it, kind of like the old 70s Rats. And does it sound better than the other chips? I don't know, but it's how I made it, and it sounded so great that I was like, I don't ever want to change it just in case.
I made this. I'm putting it on the fridge, and that's what we're doing.
And if people want it, cool. I don't think anybody thinks that it sounds worse than the new ones, so I might as well include it. Maybe you can sell the chip alone for like $1,000 in 10 years. You never know. The thing is, actually, I did do an A/B probably like a year ago between the kind of a more modern, the OP07 chip or whatever it's called, and then the LM308. And they do sound different, but you can get there basically by tweaking the EQ knobs. So it's like the LM308 I find is to my ears a little bit more warm and like you can say vintage sounding.
Yeah. And that chip's in like everything, because like isn't it that's what like is in the Distortion Plus and things like that?
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, I only know of the LM308 being in the Rats. And maybe anything.
I may be wrong, but I feel like that's like that was one of the first like 8-pin like op amps that was just in everything.
So yeah, the one thing I like about the Red Ryder is it sounds really nice at lower gains.
Yeah.
So just kind of like the and then the LED clipping that it has is a lot louder, but it's
nice.
You can turn everything up. Normally pedals don't sound great with everything turned up. I'm going to keep the volume there just so I don't break what it's plugged into. But yeah, everything dimed is...
You can tell you really make pedals to like riff through.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Just from going around your line and then listening to you play, like, you like to play riffs, you like big chords, you like that jangle, you like that sparkle. It's
That's
like
exactly my sound, yeah.
Good stuff to like lay a song over, not just... I mean, I'm sure you could shred into all these pedals, but like you can tell that...
I can't shred too well, but someone else can, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's
I just
super
turned
cool.
the wet-dry blend a little bit, which is a cool... So you got a little bit of the clean and then like a pretty much maxed out pedal.
Nice. I just now realized that that's a knob.
That is one confusing thing. That is it's a hidden feature. It's a knob. The LED is a knob itself.
I have sold these and never realized that that was a knob.
Well, I've had people actually call me up and, not call me up. What is it, 1992?
DM me. Get it, slip into my DMs.
People will slide into the DMs and say, my Red Ryder is broken or the distortion is really quiet. And then I'm like, what's up with the wet, dry blend? And they're like, what? And
yeah.
Like, that light? Because I tried to include like the little logo on there that's a W and a D. And of course I make it difficult by not putting real words. But someone will be like, oh yeah, I had that turned all the way to the right to dry. And I was like, oh yeah, turn that baby all the way left.
Yeah.
And the reason I put that on the pedal, like I personally don't really use the wet dry blend on guitar very much, like in my own playing. It's cool for like effect. Or when stacking with another pedal, but I did it for bass guitar. So it was kind of like in my studio, I love the half dry bass amp tone, half dirty.
Blown out rat kind of thing,
So you get the clarity of one with the gnarliness of the other, and it's like a nice little like bi-amp setup.
You don't lose the definition, it doesn't fall into mud, it still has some clarity and punch and cuts through, but you still get that crispiness and I love that.
So that's exactly kind of why I created the pedal in the first place. It was a vessel for the wet dry blend on bass. And then when I ended up hearing how good it sounded on guitar, I was like, oh boy, okay, we're onto something here. So it's
awesome.
It's a great little pedal. It's fun to play with.
Well, thanks, man. I super appreciate talking to you today.
Thanks for having me out here.
Awesome.
This was awesome.